Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the series. So, in this session, we are going to talk about what everyone in this world loves, be it €100 or $1,000,000. Everyone loves inheritance from their parents. So, we are going to handle inheritance in JavaScript and to see how it works. During the course of this demo, keep in mind that JavaScript implements inheritance via prototype, via an object and not a template, as in other languages. I know it may sound a bit confusing right now. What does it mean? We will discuss that in in the course of this series. So, without wasting any time, let's get started. During the course, to understand inheritance slash prototypical inheritance in JavaScript, we are going to extend our original country object and have it represent a capital. So as you can see on the screen, the first dashboard is what we did in our previous section. For the people who are new, I will put the link to the video. Please feel free to have a look at it. And then so for this one, we will add two more properties to our country object, which is center and schedule. And this is the actual hospital slash, healthcare center where the vaccination will be provided. So as you can see, Brussels, there is a St. Elizabeth Hospital, and that is the schedule. The aim of this session is not to rewrite the complete functionality, for example, of properties, which is the name, the doses given and vaccinated over here, as well as the methods of the original object, for example, the percentage vaccinated. So what I would do, I would start from my GitHub repo. I would clone this. It contains the base, which we left in the last session. So I will start building from there. Let's go ahead, copy it, and I would put it somewhere in my machine. Let's go ahead and copy it under code, JS objects. I already have it copied, but in your case, you can always go ahead and do something like this. It doesn't matter where you put it, honestly. You just do git clone and then the value, right? Let me open the code base over here. So this is where we were in our last session. Just for information, the only difference between last session and right now is that I have replaced the country object with the name place, because I think place is a better representation of what we are going to do. So capital cannot inherit from country, capital should inherit from a place, and so on and so forth. Nothing major about it. So if I do, let's do an npm I, and I think I have already done that. So let's, oops, not CS. And then you need to do npm I to install all the packages. I have already done that, so I will skip that part and straight away go to npm start. And let's see what do we have here. So it's still loading. If I go, let me go here. It's running on 3001 for me. Great. So this is where we were in our last session now. Let's have a look at our source code. Remember, we had our app.js, and then this is how we were reading the objects back from each module, and we also logged in. If I look into the object structure, notice immediately that it says, so all this logging over here, it mentions that it's of the type place, right, which is our base object. Remember over here, we had created these objects like this. So it's a new place, and that's the reason the type is place. Nothing major, nothing extraordinary over here. But if I expand this object, I would see all the properties. That's my function. And notice there is something called underscore underscore proto underscore underscore. If I look at other objects, it's the same. I have proto object and all the properties. And the proto object consists something called a constructor, and then another proto object, which is of the type object. This constructor is nothing but the function which we described over here. It's this guy. name, doses given, vaccinated, and populated. So if I put this thing over here, it would be a bit more clear. See, this matches over there. That's the proto object and the properties. Let me do something cool. Before I do that, let me also point out to you the fact that each object, so for example, Belgium, this was US, and I think this was India. Yeah. Each of these objects has its own copy of percentage, right? What if I go back to my source code and I say, okay, don't copy this thing. I don't need it. What I'm going to do, I will say place dot prototype dot, let's say, percentage is, it's a function. And then we say this dot population is basically, I can simply, oh sorry, I can simply return this value from here. Let's copy this, let's paste it over here, save it, everything's look okay. And if I look at my, let's refresh it so that I have a clean slate. Now let's look at our Belgium object. The percentage has gone, vanished, but still my value is there. Now that's the magic. Now similarly, if I look into other objects, so that was United States, the same story. If you look closely, the percentage has not vanished actually, it has moved to the proto object. So my function has gone from here, from the above block, to something inside a proto. We will see what proto is, and so on and so forth, right? But as far as JavaScript is concerned, the functionality works. If I say Belgium dot percentage, it's still a function, valid function, and it works. How does it happen? So let me quickly show you an image. To understand, so how does this happen? To understand this, we need to look at something called a prototypical inheritance chain. To understand this, we need to understand what the new keyword, the new invocation actually is doing over here. What it does, whenever we say, for example, over here, when we say new, this guy, the new object, what it does, it picks up something from, it picks up the object from place.prototype property and copies it over to Belgium's underscore underscore proto underscore underscore object, and then also maintains a link between them. So I'll say it again. Whenever we do a new of something, the new operator, JavaScript behind the scenes, it will go to the template object, so as to say, the base object, so as to say. It will look at its prototype property, pick it up from it, and then copy it to the destination, to the newly created objects underscore underscore proto property. To prove it to you, if I go back now to my source code, let's go here. If over here I can say, first of all, let's clear our console over here. I don't want too many consoles happening. Save it. Let's go to const, and then over here we can do something like console.log proto, and then say proto, give me this property, and then I can also do prototype, and then say place.prototype. right? Now, if I save it, let's open the code and then we can see, let's refresh it so that I have a clean slate. So that's for the proto property percentage f constructor, and similarly prototype property for the place of this guy of the base object is percentage f. They are exactly the same. And to be doubly sure about it, we can also say print, are they equal? So Belgium dot underscore proto is oops, that's my Bluetooth keyboard going nuts. So, oh, come on, be kind to me, come on. Let's move all this, equality, and then we say place dot prototype. If I save it and have a look at it, it says true behind the scenes. And it's true for Belgium, it's also true for USA, India, and all the objects which I have over here. And that's what I meant when I said that the JS first copies it over and then also maintains a link between two. And the reason the percentage was working was because I changed the place.prototype percentage over here. So I moved it from there, and that's why Belgium's proto property also had it. I'm not saying Belgium has that property, but Belgium's underscore underscore proto underscore underscore object has that property, right? That's the link between two. Second, other important thing to keep in mind is that Belgium.prototype is also a property. And that's why it confused me initially, because honestly, it's a wrong nomenclature JavaScript developers used, the implementer used when they were writing this mechanism. Let's see it over there. So if I do Belgium.prototype, first of all, let's check if there is something called Belgium.prototype. Maybe there is not. So let's call it, has Belgium a prototype property, right? Okay, let's comment all this thing out. And also we do a console.clear so that I don't have to reload the page every time. If you have a look at it, that's the source code. Ooh, Belgium does not have a prototype. It is, but it's undefined, right? The property for Belgium is undefined. Now I can write, so right now it's undefined, but what if I do something like this? What if over here we say Belgium dot prototype dot is a new object, and then I say Belgium dot prototype dot, let's say, has a new has what's it called, is COVID free, and we set it to true. Right now, if I save this, let's see what happens. Now the Belgium's prototype, the object property is there, and then it has the object has a property over there, right? We have defined a prototype. Now what it means, if I create any other object, let's say constant, one of the countries in, for example, let's say Brussels. Now if I say new constant Brussels is new Belgium, I'm not saying we should do it. That's not a production core. I'm just trying to make a point across that it's the prototype object that JavaScript copies from the base object to your destination object. So that's the way inheritance is implemented. So if I do this, so Belgium's proto is the place's prototype. So that is the magic of the new keyword. That's what is happening. Let's close all this and see something else in action. So if I remove all the, let's comment it out rather. What if I do something interesting? What if I say, okay, Belgium dot percentage, it's a function again, and then I say return 100%. Will that work? Now what I'm doing is I'm defining the same percentage function on the prototype object, the base, and then also on the child object. So it's basically I'm trying to override it. Will it work? Let's see. Oh, sorry, it's not 100%, it's 100. So if I do this, and sorry, I need to log the object also somewhere. So let's do console. Oh, no. So let's do it, and we see Belgium does have 100%, right? So what is happening behind the scene is that my Belgium has a percentage, and then the prototype also has a percentage. What JavaScript is doing is to say, okay, you want me to look for something called a percentage property. I will first of all look at the Brussels one. If the property over there exists, fair enough. Otherwise, I will look at Brussels underscore underscore proto underscore underscore property to figure out if there is a percentage. That's the reason why for US and for India in our example, the value is coming from the prototype dot percentage property. It's going up the chain over here, right? So that everything is clear. It's using for Belgium, it uses this function, but for US and India, it's using the percentage function. And this way of going up the chain to figure out your values is called prototypical chain. So searching the prototypical chain or prototypical inheritance. Took me a while to figure this out. Why? Primarily because I'm not that bright, let's say 60%, but 40% of the problem is the naming of, of your objects. As I mentioned, the prototype property is not the prototype of place. The prototype should actually be named, honestly, should be called prototype template for derived objects, something like that, right? And this proto should be called, should have been, first of all, I don't understand why it's underscore 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 underscore. Okay, I do understand because the private fields in JavaScript, it's a nomenclature to have it underscore, but I would have preferred that, okay, you keep the underscore, but don't call it proto, call it base prototype or something so that we know what exactly this object points to behind the scenes, right? So another a very important question that might come up is to say, okay, but what's a big deal about it? I could have just written the percentage function over here once. For example, I have already written it here once, so it's not that I have to write it multiple times. So why should I use place.prototype.percentage and not simply just write it? The answer to that is twofold. The first is if you write a percentage property like that, anyone can override it to anything else in other modules of your code. So to give you an example, let me comment this out. I have my place.prototype.percentage. What if somebody goes ahead and says, you know what, for Belgium, percentage is actually a number. Now this would also, for as far as JavaScript is concerned, this is a legit implementation. You create a new property and it is of the type 23. Not a good idea, right? The second problem in our first approach of writing the function in the constructor function itself is that every object will have its own unique copy of the percentage function. So we are duplicating the memory behind the scenes for the object. So if you want one function which should be inherited by all the others, it's better to put it in the place.prototype.percentage property, right? And schedule, because remember our goal, oopsie, it's because I did this one to something like, because remember, right? So is to our add a new object. So what we would like so what we'd like to do in second session is to write another capital object which will inherit from the base object and add two properties, something like this, something place which will inherit the, sorry, something like this, something like capital inherits place, and then we define our own test center property so that we can use them in our dashboard. That is constructor function, one constructor function inheriting from another constructor functions. Because remember, in this one, we had objects inheriting from constructor functions. That will be part of the next session. See you soon.